All right. This is Hernan Mayo. You know me already. And this is week number 5 of the CEO Masterclasses. And I got to share with you a little surprise. If you miss most of these master classes, if you aren't paying attention at all to any of these things, don't worry about it. I recorded them for you, and I give you a week for you to speed listen to all these things because there will be a test, but it won't be me that's going to give you the test. Is whoever you are going to interact with in the future that wants to see what you learned in the past 6 weeks. So this is the game plan. So we all of you have an opportunity to create a presentation of everything that you have learned in these master classes that impacted you, right? And some of you have shared that already. You know, some of you had more important, more meaningful ones than other ones. Everybody has been a little different, but I'm sure that everybody here has learned at least a little bit. And then we'll do a recap in our final surprise guest meeting. But so in this presentation, it should be a two-part presentation. So one of the presentations is about what you learn in the CEO master classes. No, hopefully a couple of slides. You know what you learn, get takeaways. You know, this is not a program for everybody. This is especially made for you guys. Okay. The second thing is where you have to roll up your sleeves, which is the global executive internship program, apprenticeship program, and what you did with your mentor. So you are supposed to first talk a little bit about your mentor, right? And meet the mentor and talk a little bit with them. The second thing is you learn a little bit about the industry. Hopefully you learn a little bit about the company, that either the mentor's company or a company that you're interested in. And then lastly is what location do you want to live in, and what is the supply and demand for what you want to work on, or the market where you're going to end up in, so that you can get a feel for whether you are the supply to that market or not, right? And sometimes you might be in a location that is not conducive to what you studied or what you do. And it's okay. You know, people survive that way, but at least you know. And if you don't know, then you get a little deeper. Who are the chamber of commerces? What are the organization? What are the contacts? No? And this is what we do when we do a little bit of research about the market. Um, so that should be what you learn. And then last but not least is the meeting that your last meeting with your mentor should be all about you. You know, by that time, you should have had some sort of rapport with your mentor. You have met him one, two, three, 4 times, and they will tell you, you know, being brutally honest about you, starting with probably your LinkedIn, your resume, and how you position yourself to the market as a product, right? And get brutal advice. Hopefully, you won't get insulted if they tell you that your picture sucks. No, because by that time you know them, that they mean that they care about you. They're not telling you to rag on you. Okay. Or if your LinkedIn, it's not that good for what you're doing, it's okay. I take it. Sometimes I I don't like it, but it's all, it's like a piece of clay, right? We when we're in learning mode with our piece of clay, sometimes we want to be hardened, and sometimes we need to be, molded. So this is the time to get molded. If you ever want to take your career to and your business to the next level, this is the time to mold yourself. No, the more moldable, malleable you are, the better it is for the outcome that you want. And the outcome that you want has to do a lot with meeting other people and interacting with other people. And this is where Ignacio Riveira will be sharing some of his advice. But before I share about what Ignacio is going to talk about, which he'll share himself, but I want to introduce Ignacio Riveira, right? Ignacio Riveira, besides being, my best friend in the world, because that guy and I hang out a lot, the most important thing is this guy has learned to pivot and survive time and time again. But why? What is the success that Ignacio has? From my perspective, obviously his personality is tops, right? He doesn't get bent out of shape that much. We all get pissed here and there, but Ignacio has a way to calming down and saying, you know what, this is not personal, right? This is not personal. It's all a business. But most importantly, it's all about negotiation, right? It's sometimes with your friends. Yeah, let's say no, I want to go out at 6 o'clock, right? And the other one says, no, I want to go out at 8 o'clock, and you don't agree at time. So it all comes with negotiation and sacrifice. So Ignacio has learned to sacrifice a lot, but that's what makes him successful. He is able to get up from the from any loss that he might have or any setback, and be a champion. And by the way, so I brought the World Cup, and Ignacio and I were rooting for opposite teams. I was rooting for Argentina. Sorry, Alex. Sorry, but I was rooting for Argentina. It's a long story. I'll share with you personally later on. But Ignacio won. So Ignacio, congratulations. Here's your cup. Grab it on the other side. Grab it on the other side. Okay. So you're the champion. The champion. I'll keep the ball. Okay. I'll keep the ball because I like. Well, I like it. At any rate, Ignacio is going to talk to us about what he does for a living. So Ignacio is the head of data management for one of the largest companies in the United States, Ryder Corporation, definitely the largest logistics firm in the US. He sees a lot of data, but most importantly, he talks to a lot of people inside his company. So today we're going to talk about that. So Ignacio, take it away.
Thank you. Great intro. Thank you for the goal. I was very excited last night. Both myself and my family. I was born in Spain, and my grandparents were from Spain, so we were pretty excited last night. But we definitely enjoyed all the games. And just for the record, I did root for Argentina against England. I thought it would be a great match to have them both. So I was pretty excited when that happened. So with that, I think.
Hold on. I screwed up.
Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay. So I think today is a good example, this class, for how 48 countries came together, and they all had their differences, but they came together and they all really like Buc-ee's, apparently, and some of our American food. So we definitely, I am definitely a fan of Buc-ee's as well, but I think it's a really good example in finding common ground, depending on what area you work with. So I'm going to do a couple of slides. I do want to leave some time for you guys to ask questions of both myself and Hernan. So I wanted to go through a couple of slides, but most importantly, I wanted to make sure we have time to talk. So with that, I'm going to go to my next slide here. So I think a big part of what happens in corporate America is really finding that balance, right? You come into a conversation, you come into a group, you work with different teams. I've worked in finance teams, I've worked in marketing teams, sales, and most recently in the last 10 years in the technology side. And a lot of it is, how do you come into that situation, right? You're either working as part of a project or you on in a project. You on the left-hand side, you're positioning and bargaining. What do I need? What's my project timeline? What is my boss asking me to do? But really what they care about is what's in it for them. You want to solve something that you have a mutual understanding of. You want to share the risk, and you want that law of reciprocity, right? So what does that mean, right? Like, what's in it for me? What can I take away from all of this? So I found this diagram. I think it's a pretty good diagram of the different things that impact that framework. And I'll go through each one of these in the following slides, so you don't have to memorize this section. But I thought it gave a really good, look at the different pieces that we think about as we talk to different teams, right? So the first thing you want to do is you want to identify the currency of exchange. And this is a very common way of looking at it. The more you spend time working with different groups, you kind of do this naturally. You know what, you want to figure out, am I going to inspire the team based on a common, goal? Is it a task? Does everybody need to, after COVID, right? You think about companies that were doing retail only, and then they moved into e-commerce. So you have a common goal. You're inspired to move forward. You have a common task. That will be an example of that. Where you position yourself, building those strong relationships. And then last but not least is that personal connection, right? Like, how do you make that connection with them overall? This slide is actually probably my favorite one, probably the hardest one for people to get. I hear this a lot, especially as having spent a good amount of time in sales, as opposed to what they quote unquote call the business side or the business side of the equation. There's always navigating that hidden organization. And I think it's so important, right? If you work in sales, the first thing they teach you if you're a hunter is you gotta get to the decision maker as quick as possible, right? And one of the things that I love about this diagram is, you might come into a situation, somebody's connecting you with that organization. Let's say they have a need for a certain technology, right? And somebody connects you, right? It might be that IT director, right? They bring you into the meeting, but that IT director can block the interaction, right? Maybe they don't like how you presented something, or the support model will go against their organization, and they could be a blocker. The main thing here is that hidden organization is really understanding that decision-making process. There's champions, there's people that can contribute, but the decision maker could say yes, and they could say no, but a blocker can only say no, right? I think this is such a critical component of it. Most people don't get it. They get offended by it. I'm sure at some point in your life, a salesperson, a very effective salesperson, is going to get in contact with you. You're going to be that connector, and they're going to try to figure out who's going to make the decision on that buy, right? Like, if you're buying an expensive piece of software, you're going to spend hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars in that software. They're going to look at you, and if you're junior in your role, they're going to say, well, I don't need to deal with Hernan. I need to deal with his boss. His boss is the one that makes the decision, right? And they'll skip you. And it's not personal. They're just trying to get to that decision maker, because you could say no, but you might not be able to say yes. I think this is such an important one to always keep in mind, is always trying to understand the dynamics of projects or teams you work on, like who's really the decision maker. You might naturally gravitate to a connector, somebody that you work with well, that is the person that brought you into the project or connected you with that person. But at the end of the day, if you want to get something done, you're going to have to get to that decision maker eventually. And I think it's such an important slide. If you take away nothing else from my presentation, this is so important, especially in large organizations. Sometimes it's not very clear who the decision maker is, but the quicker you can ask those questions and get to that in the most diplomatic way possible, you're navigating that hidden organization. This is one that we do a lot, especially on the technology side. We do this a lot with processes. We do this with technology as well. So I'm sure at some point in your future, you're going to hear about a RACI graph, right? So that they're going to put you into buckets, right? If you're working with a large organization, like I'll use Hernan as an example, right? Hernan is going to be responsible for the activities of his bank, but there's people on his team that are accountable, right? There's people on his team, maybe like his boss, who's consultant, right? So he's responsible for his organization in the United States. There's people on his team that are accountable. He's got to keep certain people, maybe people in the government, informed, and some people consultant. Understanding how you deal with where people fall into these different buckets, you need to ask questions, right? And people will get really upset if they're accountable for the things and you're just keeping them informed, right? That is a classic breaking point in a relationship. If you understand the dynamics of that organization and where they fall into each of these buckets, it's really, really important. because you can make somebody very mad, especially if they, number one, if they're responsible, right? There could be that decision maker, and you treat them like somebody who just needs to be informed. You're going to piss them off, right? If they're accountable, right? So they could be a very important department within an organization, and they're accountable for whatever you're trying to implement, right? You may be working with that responsible person, the person that's responsible for the whole group, but each one of those team members reporting up to that responsible person is also accountable. So you got to know that about them, right? And I think that's the dynamics of asking good questions and getting to that response. Again, really, really important chart. You're absolutely gonna run into this in large organizations because it's not super clear. In a small company, sometimes the responsible and accountable is the owner of the company, right? Everybody else is consulted. You get their feedback. It's super easy. It's a small company. It's very easy to figure this out. Large companies, it can be very confusing. So with that, I'll kind of go to the next one. Sometimes it's the way you communicate with them. There's these three buckets, and I actually like this slide a lot too. You want to figure out how you want to position where you're coming from. So if you're trying to implement a solution, so I'm using a lot of examples in technology because I work in that space. You want to figure out if you're aligning your project to their strategic initiatives, right? Are they trying to go after a new market, so you're providing them data that they need to go after that market? Or one that happens a lot with banking is risk reduction, right? If you work in the space of medicine or in banking, there's a huge component of risk reduction. You want to make sure if you're providing a security solution, if you're hosting the data in a more secured way, you're helping them to reduce their risk. That's really important. And I would say in a smaller entity, oops, I didn't mean to go. In a smaller entity, you're really trying to find that opportunity. Where does that kind of sit in the overall? Are you capturing a new opportunity that they're trying to go after? That's really important too. So those three are pretty common ones too that you would kind of navigate. Is how do you fit into each one of those buckets? I have a friend of mine that says this one is always, this middle section is always the trigger point. Like a lot of times risk does create a trigger point, an application that's going to have maintenance, you move into a new market and they have new laws in place. So I do believe that there is a lot of risk mitigation, especially in large companies. Everybody can see my screen still okay, right? I don't know why it flipped to something else here. Oops. Bear with me a second here. I'm not sure why my screen is not going next.
Yeah, you're good.
I'm trying to page to my next slide and it's not letting me. Oops.
Oh, turn it off and turn it back on.
Yeah.
By the way, while you do that, since you're not in the middle, one of the things that people forget is, what this allows is the building of trust and relationships within the organization, by the way. So the more you learn about these things, the better your career will be, because you're learning to interact with people, build relationships, which is so important within your organization. If you want to be impacted, and I'll steal his thunder a little bit. If you don't want to be impacted by other people's decisions and they not knowing you, right? You better know this, because this is the way to influence decisions within your company. Go ahead, Iggy.
Yeah, no, and I think it kind of ties really well into this one. It's towards the end, and I want to make sure it resonates. A lot of people focus their energy, especially as we're younger. I'm really competent. I graduated from a great school. I have all this great experience in my internships, and you come into these situations thinking you can build trust purely from from competence, right? And a lot of times you forget those two other elements, right? A lot of what your supervisor is going to look at, the executives in the company, they're going to look at your consistency, right? If you can deliver every single time that they meet with you and you deliver something, that's consistency, right? You can be competent, but you can be competent and be a theoretical person and never deliver. So you want that consistency, right? You always come to the table and you always come up with at least a win, even if it's a small win, but you keep building on those wins. Like my favorite movie, Moneyball. I think Moneyball, if you haven't seen it, is such a fantastic movie. It applies so well to corporate America as well, right? It's all about getting, small wins, small base hits that win games. That's consistency, right? You could be super competent and you could be the best player on the field, but if you're not blocking the balls from getting to the goalkeeper, if you're not passing the ball to the other person, that consistency is super important. And I put a star on care because this one is probably, to me, I say this to every single new person that starts with me. The one thing that people will always remember about you is that you took good notes and repeated what you heard last time. And that shows you care, right? Somebody comes to you with an issue, right? You look pretty competent. You set up the meeting on time. You set up the follow-up meeting on time. So you got the competence and you got the consistency, but you show up to the meeting and you ask the person the same question that you asked them in the last meeting. That just shows you didn't care enough to take notes, right? If you take notes and the next time you meet with that person, you take the first minute or two of that meeting and you repeat back, hey, last time we spoke, these two items seem to be really important to you. I want to show you how we can help you with those two items. Are those two items still important to you? Right? Surprisingly, most people don't do that. I can tell you a lot of competent people that I work with that will come back to meetings, terrible notes, think they could show up to the meeting and do a quick check and don't remember what the person talked to them about. And nothing breaks trust faster than not listening to people. So super important. Take notes, show you care. It's important to be competent. It's important to be consistent, but absolutely show that you cared enough to take notes. Very, very important. Communication is you always have to think about how you're going to communicate the message, establish that truth, introduce, relevant information, reframe the information, the sense of urgency, and really ask, right? Ask what you can do next. So thinking about that context, right? The context of your second meeting with someone can be what you talked about last time, and identifying, bringing in some insights. Hey, last time we spoke, we talked about your need to get into this market. I did some research and it looks like the critical things in that market are this. Right. And then you ask them, hey, is that what you're seeing as well? Right. So getting through that communication by building that context of what you want to talk about. So really important. And then this one is really just about how you execute on a larger project. So getting through, that initial alignment, right? And this could be also building a relationship, right? You get that initial alignment when you meet with them the first time. You follow through on the things they've asked you to do. You bring value without conditions. Hey, I know we talked about these two things, but I thought this third thing we can help you with as well. So you bring value to that conversation, and you sustain that credibility and that visibility with them as well. And then this is kind of your last checklist, right? If you think about all the little things, the little components we talked about. This could be a good checklist for a pre-meeting, or the first time you meet with somebody, like how am I going to come into this communication, understand where they kind of sit in that responsibility matrix. What kind of message, like what do I think I could bring to this message? And a lot of this has to do with the smaller the meeting, the easier that is to do, right? But if it's a larger meeting, that question number 2 is really important, right? You want to direct your message to that decision maker as much as possible, but provide that person that connected you. You also want to give them respect. Hey, hey, Hernan, thanks for introducing me to Mike. Mike is I wanted to come back based on some information I got from Hernan. I think we can help you with this solution. So you want to bring them into the conversation, but you want to direct that position and that communication as much as possible to that decision maker. And then, of course, getting alignment, right? How do you bring everybody together? Everybody's got the same goals and needs. You want to feel like you care about what their responsibility is. If you work for the same company, it should be pretty easy, right? If you have different departments, you all work for the same company. And an analogy I always use, because there's always sometimes there's a conflict between IT and a business unit. And whenever I find myself in that scenario where they start pushing back, like I don't feel like I understand, I always remind them, when I get my paycheck every week or every 2 weeks, it still says the same name as it does on yours, right? We're not going after different goals. I stand nothing to gain from you not being successful, because if you're successful, the company's successful. If the company's successful, there's more opportunities for everybody. So that bringing it all back to that same common alignment is really, really important as well. So that's my last slide. Hopefully that was helpful. I'm going to go back out here and open the meeting back. Okay, perfect. So any questions about the items I presented there? I will share the deck. So I can share it here. Any questions for you, Hernan? Any questions from you, Hernan?
Well, so
things that resonate with you as somebody that's worked in many different teams?
I think it resonates with all of us, right? It is for us that work in major corporations. Sometimes at the beginning, particularly in my 20s, I had a really hard time in navigating my big company, and what I tell people that are starting or younger is this is why building relationships is so important, no? And that's the critical component is, you got to start building relationships at all levels, right? Not only with the people that are your age, your big brothers and sisters within companies that are 2 or 3 years apart, right? And then the more senior people, and see what they're doing, and then so on and so forth. And by the way, how do you do it? One day at a time. No, everybody wants to conquer, big corporations from the beginning. And what you're trying to do is build relationships, and build relationships. Relationships are built with time and trust. No, to trust you, I gotta spend time with you. Make sure that you're doing the right thing. The more Ignacio and I, the more we've known each other throughout our lives, right? The more we can trust each other. And me, by just saying one word, he knows, and then we react, right? It's that's the type of relationship you build with people. That's the same type of relationship you want to build with your mentors, with everyone that you meet that is along the way. Even the people that you don't care are that important. So one of the things that happens to us, Iggy, and you might want to share a little bit of your story. You didn't share your story about pivoting, because him and I studied the same thing, but I ended up in banking, running a bank now, right? And you're in a totally different position. You want to share a little bit about that?
Sure.
Navigation?
Yeah, and I think one last thing, one takeaway from the session too, that I want to make sure you guys got is every interaction matters, right? Because you never know when that interaction is going to come back to help you or to deter you. Unfortunately, one really nice thing about working remote for me is I have a really good set of notes. So I have a OneNote, right? And I have information, what I discussed last time with this person when I met. So when I start a new meeting, I look at that note, but every interaction matters. Some people have great memories and they're able to leverage that interaction and use it for the future. Going back to Hernan's comment, right? So I worked in a large company called Royal Caribbean Cruise Lines. and they went through a restructure. I lost my position. Hernan always talked about, connections, and this is going back to 2010, right? So LinkedIn was popular, but it wasn't what it is today, right? And I remember Hernan and I remember my other good friend, his wife was really, really into it. And she's like, she's like, Iggy, you got to get into it. You gotta connect as many people as possible. So I ended up losing my job through a restructure. Happens at large companies all the time. And I had 150 contacts in my LinkedIn, right? I now have, I think at the last count, almost 3,000, right? But those 150 included Hernan, right? So one of the things I realized is that even if I hadn't talked to Hernan every day, when I looked at LinkedIn, it had a very magical thing. It said, this person has more than 500 contacts. So I'm like, I'm going to block a time every single day where I'm going to call those people that have more than 500 contacts. And then I'm going to go 500 to 400 to 300. Because if they have 500 contacts, that means they talk to people, right? That means I could give them my 30-second speech on who I am and what I'm looking for. And by doing that, you kind of open up your network, right? By the time I got a job, I was probably over 500 contacts at that point. So in a 2.5 month period, I amounted a bunch of contacts just because I was reaching out to people, asking them, what their companies were working on, and building that. And I was able to pivot. So I went from primarily working in finance, and I really, really enjoyed working in the technology space. So I said, my next job, I want to pivot, and I want to work in technology and product development. So my next job, I worked in product development for a smaller company. And because it was a smaller company, I was able to do, I had a lot more control over implementing a new CRM process, implementing a new ERP, which basically ran the infrastructure of the company based on my background in process engineering. And it all came from talking to people, right? Just like we're doing here, and keeping really good notes and asking people about themselves and where they are, and understanding where they are in their different pieces. And the other piece I told my son all the time, who's 19, is the other part you want to do is you want to get on people's short list. So when you have a job, your goal is to get on people's short list. So you look at your LinkedIn, everybody who's got more than 500 contacts. If they're people in the industry you're interested in, you don't need to ask them for a job. You just have to impress them, right? You just have to say, this guy Hernan, man, he's pretty sharp. I think next time I have an opening, I'm going to reach out to that guy, because you know what? I have 500 people that applied that I don't know them, but I remember these 5 people that I've interacted with, especially that guy Hernan. He posts really interesting comments on LinkedIn. He seems like a very likable person. That guy will get along great with the culture of my company. So all those things are super important in building your network. So any questions from the team here?
Yeah.
Have you run into some of these challenges? Have you felt like, hey, I work in finance, but I'm having a hard time communicating with that person in marketing, or I work in sales and I don't get these people in operations. Why do they keep killing my deals? That's a common one, by the way. You hear that one a lot. A good salesperson hates operations, almost always, right? They're like, oh, every deal I bring them, they don't work as fast as I do, but you have to build that. You have to build that commonality.
Go ahead, Albert.
Hi, Ignacio. Thank you for the presentation.
Oh, you're welcome.
It's been very intriguing and also very informative. So a question that I have for you is a clarifying one. You presented quickly on the map for the hidden organization of your company. And coming around the curve of my 20s now, I'm also resonating with the experience of learning how to talk to the right people. And so what I wanted to know is, in your experience, especially as you've gone from being one who's informed to one who's a decision maker. Have you ever seen that hidden network is grossly misaligned with what the public facing structure of the organization is?
I'm sorry, I missed the last part. So has that the decision making part being?
My question is, have you ever noticed that decision makers in your operation, in your day-to-day life of your role, are not the same decision makers perhaps listed in the company webpage?
Got it. Well, that's a hidden organization, right? Sometimes the person that you think is a decision maker is not. Sometimes, I'll give you an example, right? I was in finance, so this one's a very typical one. In a small entity, in a small company, the regulators will look at a CFO as a very important role in a company, right? They have to sign off on the financials. They have to make a lot of the decisions strategically. How do they do the financing and cash flow? They look like, you go on their webpage and they have their executives. And you see a CFO there, like, wow, that guy's, well, he's in a really good position. Well, because it's a small company, maybe all the decisions and every single invoice goes through the owner of the company, right? So that's a really easy example. Like sometimes you think you know who the decision maker is, but you may want to continue to pry and get a better understanding of what their dynamics are of decision making. And it all comes back to that grid, right? Like, are they really responsible? Or are they just being, or are they a contributor, right? Maybe the CFO, even though from a regulatory perspective, they are a decision maker and they're going to be held accountable, but the CEO will say, you know what? I want to go to this higher risk of financing as opposed to that other one, right? Or I'm willing to play a little bit of accounting math, a little bit of shenanigans with the accounting, and the CFO is not good with that, but the owner of the company ultimately makes that decision. So it comes down to asking really good questions, depending if you're a salesperson or you're just trying to navigate it based on what your role is.
I have a quick,
but it's sometimes it's not obvious. Maybe is what I'm saying.
I have a quick follow-up, sir.
Yeah.
So I'll share.
Well, let him ask his question. Let him ask his question.
No, I was gonna say I'll share with you, Albert. I'll share with you. Remind me later on. There's a book that I read early in my career that helped me out a lot. It's called MASS, Major Account Sales Strategies. MASS, what it does is basically you have to understand the audience types, within organizations, and then learning that audience type and delivering that. For example, he mentioned he deals with finance, technology, right? Marketing. You present the same project to a marketing person, they look at the look and feel. No? You present it to a finance person, they want to see the numbers. They want to look at the little detail of the numbers. Right. Sometimes we make the presentation based on who we are, right? Like I am a marketing guy, sales guy. I like everything, looking good. But I know that somebody along the way is going to look at numbers and is going to stop me, right? He's going to be the one that's going to say no. So therefore, I need to consider every single type within the organization so that when they see it, right, they approve it or push it along. The compliance people, in my case, as a bank leader, I'm trying to look at every single piece: the regulatory piece, the compliance piece, the risk piece, the sales piece, obviously, and also the credit piece. So every single piece, I need to be informed in, so that we can have a dialogue and they can check off, so that your project moves on. It's a little
yes. Well, the follow-up I had is just what I think you communicated well, Ignacio, is not every person who tells you no is capable of telling you yes. And that is something that I've had to build confidence in and through the existing sales experiences that I've had.
Do you work in sales, Albert?
No longer, but I have a small history in sales, yes.
Okay. Yeah, that sales can be depending on what your role is, right? Like there's always two definitions in sales. There's your hunters and your huggers, right? Your huggers are your account management. It's all about building trust and having a good customer service experience. But if you're a hunter, your role is to figure out who the decision maker is as soon as possible, because you're just trying to close a deal. You're just trying to you eat what you hunt, right? And they can be really, sometimes they come off as kind of a pain, right? But that's the nature of preparing and knowing, who's in the room. And I had a boss that gave me really good advice one time. He goes, never go to a meeting by yourself. Always try to bring somebody else to watch what everybody's doing. Because sometimes you're delivering something, and especially over the web, like if everybody has their cameras off, you actually don't know how people are reacting. And maybe when you're presenting, you're so into what you're presenting, you're not paying attention to how people react to what you're saying, right? So he would always say, go to a meeting with somebody else, and their entire role is to figure out how people reacted, especially the decision makers, right? Like you see the people around you, like if you say something, suddenly this guy's rolling his eyes, and this other one is like really into it, and they're nodding. Very, very important. But good questions.
Yes.
Alex, you had a question?
Alex.
So I've got two quick questions, but I believe they are separate here. So my first one is first, thank you for everything, the whole presentation. And it's regarding firstly on all of your references, because what are your references regarding relationships? Because usually at the moment, I'm more into Tony Robbins and also David Ruttman, if you have any knowledge of the guy.
Yes.
Where he mentions of making deals where he wouldn't, let's say he wouldn't make a deal where the other party wouldn't benefit. If he was the only one who would benefit, he would change the deal in order for both to benefit. So just this would be my first question. And the second question is, understanding organizations, given your history of having different parts in different structures and organizations, was there any experience that was more consolidating of this knowledge, or was it you've got lessons from each one of those and got this masterclass for us based on each one of those? Thank you.
Oh, no, those are good questions. So I think to answer your first question, right, I think it's really important. I know Hernandez loves this, but one of the areas I think is really important, especially if you're in an industry, right? So I'm gonna pick her on Hernan, right? If you want to be in the banking industry and you're always making deals that only benefit you, you're gonna get a terrible reputation, right? Like people are gonna know you as a guy who's always trying to, oh, you watch out for that guy Hernan, man. He's always trying to make a deal that only benefits him, right? So especially if you work in an area or a specific industry and you're going to bank on that industry, you always got to make it, you got to win, but you can't win to the fact where they're going to get in trouble with their boss, right? Like I made such a good deal and I really got such a good price that they're going to lose their job. So you got to be super careful, especially if you're building a reputation in an industry. And I'll use the example. So I think to me, one of the areas that's been the most challenging, that I actually enjoy the most, is working in the technology space, because so many people don't understand the value of technology, and it can be super tricky, right? Like you can have, especially in a large entity, right? You can have a solution that's going to fix that person's problem in their product team. But man, if you spend a little bit more time, you can make a solution that fixes everything for the whole company in that space, right? So if I just implement this extra piece, we're going to solve all these problems in the company. And everything I work with is enterprise, right? So I work across all the segments, all the product lines. So I get a lot of projects within a certain segment of the business. And I always try to find ways that I got to put in a solution that makes sense for everybody. That's been the most challenging, because then you gotta kind of explain it to people. Hey, if I see where you're coming from, but if you want to interact with these other teams, I think we should add this other component to it. So again, it's a little bit for me, but it's also I'm thinking about that other person that's not part of the conversation too. So it's a little bit of a a hit or miss sometimes. It's the one I get the most trouble with, by the way. Like sometimes people are like, "Oh no, you're thinking outside of what you're telling me right now." But I'm like, "Yeah, but I'm also in this role for a long time, and I want to make sure, I want to stay at this company for a while, and I want to make good decisions." So that's always an important component of it.
You know that I have there's a Christian saying that said, "What would Jesus do?" Sometimes I have a band here that says, "What would Ignacio do?" because the truth is, the thing about hanging out with people is that you know your strengths. Eventually, you get to know your strengths, but also you need to know your weaknesses, no? And your weaknesses means you have to understand who's better at that. Who's better at that? I am not better at everything. I'm good at a few good things that are key for people, but then the other things I rely on the experts. On Mike Babbitt, who's a little more patient and organized. On Ignacio, who definitely gets creative with models. On not supermodels. I mean models inside the company. Speaking of supermodels, Mo Hassan, for example, who is one of the most brilliant guys that I know. Although his voting skills, no, I'm kidding. And the point is that you know your strengths eventually with time, and then you have to mitigate the other things and surround yourself with those people that have those skill sets. And I am not an expert at everything, but I know the experts. Trust me, or at least they believe so. Mike Babbitt, speaking of expert.
We see your mouth moving, but we can't hear
You're
you.
on mute.
Should be your bottom left, hopefully.
All right, Mike, I'll skip you and for a few seconds. Sarah.
Hey, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hey, how's it going? How's it going? Mike,
From
good to
Guyana.
see you here.
Guyana
And
with
then
love.
good to see you. All right, I'm really sorry I don't have my my camera on, but I was gonna piggyback off of what you were saying about technology. I've been in trade finance for about 3 years now. And I've had some curious, odd experiences being a female that may not necessarily fit the typical trade finance banker. I've had global clients, Indians, people from Dubai, Arabs, like you name it. And it was quite a challenge to get them to even like trust me as a banker. Like I've had them calling in my bank, like, "Hey, is this girl legit?" Et cetera, as much as I was professional as could be. And funny to say, like to this day, like those people are actually like they've commended me on how I've handled relationships with them. And I think what made me do that is to have a lot of EQ and to separate yourself from what they're telling you. And I try to not get too aggressive with people. It's like a nurturing relationship, and I feel like it's long term, and you got to play the long game. Because if you're impatient, you're never going to understand each other and listen to each other. And over time, I feel like needs and feelings change. And one thing I'll add before I go is that I do a lot of modeling on Claude.
Mhm.
And what I do is I look for things that where I have like an AI thing that can research any company in the world and show me how to upsell and cross-sell any product that I have. And that's like what value I'm adding to whatever I'm doing. So I think when people see that you add value like that, and as a salesperson, I think you have to kind of take initiative more often than not. If that makes sense.
Yeah, no, those are great points, and I think you touched on a couple of things that a couple of questions have come up, right? So you always have to come to that relationship. I think emotional intelligence is super important. That's probably one of the most important skills to have in a large entity. So you can look at things objectively and step back from it. That, by the way, that's also a good reason to bring somebody else to a meeting. So if you have an important meeting, try not to go by yourself, because sometimes when you're presenting something and it's your idea, it's good to have somebody who's more objective in the meeting. Ideally, a coworker, and not your boss, but it's good to bring that other perspective. They're like, hey, you went kind of hard on these guys. Like you probably should back off and try to find more common ground. Like they can give you that feedback, without it being looked upon the wrong way. But getting feedback, I think, is really important from an emotional intelligence perspective. But absolutely, you got to bring the value on a continuous basis and find that common ground. There's always something. There's always something you can connect on. Everybody has a parent. If you're married, you have children. If you're into sports, you find out what sports team they like. There's always something that you guys can connect on, right? They could be really passionate about their job. Maybe they're in finance, but you bring a technology solution and they really love technology. You ask a couple questions, you find out you have that common bond. You really like to improve processes. You're great with Claude. Then maybe they want to learn more about Claude. So finding that common ground is really important. It goes beyond ages and cultures and everything else. It's so if you go into a large company, don't limit yourself to one group in that company. Try really to find common bonds across other companies and make it real. Like actually care about listening to other people and you're going to find something interesting about every culture. So I think that's really important too. But great.
But
thank you for sharing.
Sarah's one of our fraternity brothers that lives in.
Oh, very nice. They're a common bond.
There you go.
Yep, got a rep.
Excellent. Mike Babbitt, ready now?
Okay, sorry about that. I reconfigured my docking station and apparently the microphone wasn't included when I did that earlier today. So anyway, at the time, I think the moment's probably passed, but at the time we were talking about the hidden organization. And I'll say that it's a fluid concept as well, because even if an org chart exists, departments are constantly being merged into other departments, people are leaving. There's local politics at play where, yes, someone might have the job title, but they really look to somebody else for advice and guidance. And then there's things that just pop up that, some sort of risk to the business. And now all of a sudden the risk department has the trump card with all of the different decisions that have to be made. So I guess on the hidden organization, it really takes a skilled person to be able to interpret and ask those questions and to be able to, navigate that landmine. Because you're right, you can piss people off really easily.
Yeah, especially when there's changes in an organization and then somebody who wasn't a decision maker suddenly becomes a decision maker and you're tone deaf about it. That's a problem. Yeah. Right. I think you really, those two skills, right? Really being able to navigate that organization and knowing who's in what role and what do they do, especially in changes, and having the emotional intelligence not to mess it up.
Yeah.
Not be offended by it or.
So yeah, sorry for the late comment, but
no, it's good.
No, it's good. Iggy, you know what that I was going to mention, and Sarah reminded me how much we practice a lot of this in AKSI, right? In college. But we were doing that. We made believe we were certain things, right? And we did it for a limited amount of time. And then when we try to put the hat in the real world, we realize, oh, we're over our head. We're the president of this fraternity, or we're the marketing director. And then all of a sudden we come into big companies and realize, okay. I am the lowest one in the totem pole. And I have people that are 5 years, 10 years, 20 years ahead of me. And I'm trying to be that, no? So what are some encouragement that you can give people that are moving up to through the ranks in these organizations, or that just, want to make a big impact coming in?
I think we all go through it. It's probably the easiest way to, we've all been there at one point where we all had our first job, right? It's just like that one guy at the airport that's really pissed off at kids that are making noise. Like we were all children at one point. right? Like we were all a pain to our, a pain in the butt to our parents. It's the same thing when we start, right? Like we're all going through this and we're all navigating it. If you think that guy who's a CEO of the company was never had a first job, well, you're wrong, right? They all did, right? They were all really confused, like Mike was saying, right? Like that one, they went through 5 reorgs. I had my my current job, right? When I first started my job, within 2 years, I had 4 bosses. Like we had 3 reorgs, and one day I was reporting to the person that hired me. The next day I was reporting to somebody else, like somebody in a completely different team. Then I ended up coming back to work for the person that I reported to originally. It was crazy, right? So, and we all go through that. Like I think if you think it's unique to you, it's not. And find encouragement in that. We all have bad points in our careers. We all have bad points in our life. That's why you have this network, right? Like I talked to Hernan about all kinds of things, right? Like I'm not in banking and he's not in technology, but we have things we talk about, right? And we share things, that one person that you thought you were doing a good job and it pissed them off, and you gain confidence by explaining it to somebody else that's not so involved. We all go through those things. We're all humans and we all have different interactions. So you're never alone.
Can I add on to that, Ignacio?
Yeah, of course.
So I think just like we've all been little kids and we've all been that person. We've all, or at least eventually, likely we'll all be managers, and we'll all be managers for the first time. I remember my first manager role. I mean, I don't know if I was a good manager or a bad manager. It probably depends on who you ask and what the issue was. But I was put in charge of a team, and a few of the people on the team had literally been at Bank of America since before I was born. It was that type of a thing, and me coming in and trying to tell them to come back into the office after they'd been working from home successfully for 10 years. That's an impossible conversation to have and do well. And I'm just glad they had the grace to realize that was my first management experience. And, I guess what I'm saying is give grace to people all the way around.
Yeah. Sometimes what I say is practice makes perfect, no? And if you fall, and that was part of my talk last time, if you fall, you gotta fail forward. It's just you continue. No, the name of the game is to continue even when you have setbacks. Nothing should stop you. Even within your organization. Maybe somebody doesn't like you at the beginning. It takes time. It takes time because they don't know you, right? You're trying to build trust at the beginning. They don't trust you. And that is your goal. Your goal is to build those relationships. And the game with Argentina and Spain reminds me about the breakdown in communication. No, and I'll share later on the strategy that why Spain was so brilliant in shutting down Argentina. And it's really, you probably didn't know this, but they were choked, right? They were choked in the middle. Nobody was able to come in, and usually every time somebody had the ball, 3 people came to the ball, right? And there was a breakdown in communication because they never practiced that style. They were only attacking, right? But one of the things that teaches all of us is, there's gonna be breakdown in communication. You have to be a helper in the process of building that communication, right? Sharing information wherever you can. Be of value to people, right? Ignacio, like you said, you teach me a few things. I teach you a few things during the day. You're the expert in certain things, and you do that as well within your company, right? Within your company, people don't know, and they start coming to you more and more for these ideas, and then you become a center of influence in your company because they know that you're always going to find a solution for that. So you practice, no? By the way, I know we extended a little bit, but I wanted to share a little bit about our experience here at Apprentice Worldwide. Uh, if I tell you, one of the things that you probably seen in the past weeks is that I introduce you to 6 C-suite executives and or top execs in their company, right? 5, right? 5. We're still missing 1 for next week. Mo, Elena, Otto, myself, and Ignacio, right? And you also have, some of you have coaches that are executives that are not part of the that are not a speaker, but that have spoken in the past. And a lot of you have met with your mentors, no? The beauty of Apprentice Worldwide is the value of the network. And a lot of you do not take advantage of that. If I were in college, if I were, Ignacio, how many times, if I would have told you that there's at least 100 mentors that all they want to do is help you out, and I tell you that now, right, when you were about to graduate, how would you feel that? No?
I remember being terrified going to these sessions. Like, one of the things I always laugh about is when I got my MBA, they would bring these executives in, right, and they would come and interview us, and they would have dinner with us, and I'm like, how do I interact at dinner? like, what do I talk about? This is before the internet, right? I couldn't research the person, so it was, but you get better at it. Right. And the more you share those scenarios, right? Like we all had that first networking meeting, right? Like we all had that very awkward silence where you go to dinner, you have to take a decision maker, right? Like I'm looking at you, Albert, right? So if I'm a salesperson, right, and I got to take that person to dinner for the first time or for a lunch, I gotta do small talk for 45 minutes and then try to bring up business for 15, right? It's a skill, right? And guess who's going to help you with that? Maybe a mentor in your area, mentor in that specific, functional area you want to be in. Like there's a lot of wealth of knowledge that you're gaining for free, right? Which is amazing, right? People that care too, which a lot of times you get people that are very arrogant, but we weed them out, right? We try to weed out those that don't care about the organization, so we don't have people that don't care. So
yeah, big star for you. That's what you put in your presentation. We only have people here that care about helping other people, and that's who the mentors are, by the way. And speaking of mentors, one of the things that happens here, and I see a lot of my friends' sons and daughters, right? Like Anna. So Anna here is Joseph's daughter.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Joseph, right?
Uh-huh.
And Mike Jr. from Mike Dufour, which we know. Jack and Lynn. Guys, the cool thing about this is that we're not your parents, right? We're not your parents. Therefore, if you screw up, we're not gonna kick your ass. We care about you moving forward. It's not gonna impact us. Take full advantage. And one thing that I say, all kidding aside, is Ignacio and I and many of us have had the chance to have great mentors that are our parents, for example, and some of you may not have that, and this is where we come into play and be able to help with that aspect. No, is because I get it. Your dad is an expert in something else. It's not the fault of the parent necessarily, right? It's just, it is all different. So take full advantage of the network, okay? And this is your time to be be nice, but at least be selfish, but be nice. Because what happens is eventually when you become the expert, then you start sharing with the people that are coming up, right? That are people that are moving. Like Sarah is helping people that are that are in college. You guys might be able to help people in high school and so on and so forth. So remember to have that mentality of always be in reciprocity, which Ignacio mentioned. No, is reciprocity is how you build real trust. And by the way, how do you build trust? The number one thing is people ask me, how can I, that I have no experience, build trust with somebody that has so much experience? You know what? Presence is the number one thing. Just being present is a gift to people that are speaking, or the people that invited you somewhere or invited you to a meeting. If we have meetings and there's nobody present, it's kind of sad for us, no? Or we pull a meeting and you arrive late, or you don't care, no? So I always tell people, I spoke to Emmanuel, which we have great conversations as well, right, Emmanuel? And Dominic and Mike. You just show up, right? Even though you don't feel that you bring anything, you bring yourself, and yourself is enough. It's enough. You have a good heart. You're a good person. You want to get to meet people, right? This is the beginning of building trust. So you're very valuable, and let me remind you of that, even though you might think you're not. And again, trial, right? If that doesn't work, next person, and we keep trying until there's something that will stick. Okay, any other comments, cheap shots?
So I got one last comment. I just wanted to kind of mention to the team, in the time of in the stage that we are in the world, right? AI is becoming a bigger and bigger part of it. One important element, and the reason we have these calls, is personal interactions, right? Take every advantage of that, especially with your mentors or with individuals. If you're on a call at work and half the team is not on video, get on video. Put on a nice shirt. Have a good background. People remember your pictures, and I'm going to pick on a couple of you, right? Like in some of your pictures, I could see your face, and some I can't. You'd be surprised how silly that is. And some people, like I'm looking at Zach's picture, right? Like he's got a headshot. Like I know what Zach looks like. If I see it, Zach at the coffee shop, I'm going to know who he is, right? Like that is so important. It's such a little thing. There's a reason salespeople visit you in person, right? I'm sure that started thousands of years ago, right? Like the guy who was selling, I don't know, incense back in the, in the Middle Ages. He went to people's homes and sold incense in person. He didn't send somebody else. He went in person, or she went in person, right? So keeping your cameras on, having a picture that they see you in, all these personal connections, man, they build trust too. It's so important. So just something, it's such a simple thing, have that, if you're a guy like me, just have a couple of nice polos that are always around, have a decent background. Putting a nice polo on a call, it makes such a big difference. I have a lot of people that I do conference calls with. I work in technology, so you can only imagine a lot of people in t-shirts. It kills me. I have to tell my team, please put on a polo. Like look presentable when we're going on a call with an executive, that it just makes such a difference. So
it's funny. I tell my team that if you want a position, you got to act the position before you get it.
Yes.
If you want an executive role at a bank, how about showing up with a suit somewhere, or with a tie? Or if you want to be in marketing, how about a nice shirt and a nice background? Or if you want to be in technology, how about showcasing, something that you did? It's important. It's important. I said I was going to introduce a few people that were not part of the program. Jack, Lorenzo, Dominic, Zach, Mike, Ami from the Gambia, Divine, who was here from Nigeria. These are all part of our executive apprenticeship program. So
Very nice.
I know Anna
Welcome.
and Alex haven't been part of the program, but they're joining. Well, Anna's been part of Apprentice Worldwide for a while, and Alex is a new member of Apprentice Worldwide. So you guys, that they're part of your network now. So make sure that you connect with each other as well. Any other comments or cheap shots? Any last questions that you might add? Any advice?
Hey, Hernan, I'll ask one last question here.
Ooh,
Okay, hey, I'm here. Not in a polo, but I'm dressed since progress.
by the way,
Um,
you look the same height as Ignacio. Today you're not in trouble.
So the question is, how do you deal with coworkers, and they could be your boss, who like to take credit for everything that you're doing?
That is a good question.
But I've only experienced this in like 20 different places I've worked. So, it comes up every now and then.
Well, so it's funny that you mentioned that, because the people that did that to me, they did it one time, two times, and maybe three times. The third time, I was gone because I didn't respect them. And I don't, if that person does that to me now, they will continue to do it. And I don't want to work for that person. So, sometimes cutting my loss in a company because I don't respect the people that are on top of me. That's happened to me so many times, right? More than I should have. But then in companies where I have some trustworthy boss that gives me opportunities, that lets me present, right, Ignacio? Like you and Charles, for example, where you keep giving, that person the opportunity to shine, because you already have the role and the position. As a good manager, what you're trying is to build up your team, not, push them down. So,
And it's usually a sign of
just-
a bad organization. That's actually a really obvious sign of a bad organization, is when you have people that are taking credit, coworkers that are fighting with each other and taking credit for each other, or your boss never lets you present. That's usually a sign of a toxic culture. So it is a really important. Sometimes you could control it, sometimes you can't. But this is where AI, I'm sorry, not AI, emotional intelligence plays a big part of it. You take it in stride, you realize what you can't change, and you move on if you have to. But sometimes you can't fix it. It's a culture problem.
Yeah, guys, we passed on the time. My wife already showed me the timer by putting the food next to me. So I will allow for you guys, Albert and Sarah, to send me the questions, and we'll share them with the team, okay? Because we don't have that much time to answer. But remember, next meeting is our last. I'm gonna be sad, but it's our last masterclass. We won't be getting together anymore as a summer program. Please work on your presentations. I told you, whatever you give me is what I will share with people that I think should get to know you. So give me and all of us something that says, I'm proud of you, right? Make something really nice so that we can showcase it to other people. Focus it on two things. One, things that you've learned in this program, or meaningful about the people. And number two, this research that you did with your mentor and the work that you did, let's showcase it to people. Okay, take full advantage. So between me, I have 12,000 contacts. We have 1,700 people at Apprentice. This is your network now. Once you become part of Apprentice, it's all yours now. That's why we trust you with it. But some of you are not part of Apprentice yet, but most likely you will all be. So take full advantage of the network, and let's get your career to the next level, or your business. Okay. Next week, another surprise. I won't share the detail of who you are. You probably met him before. He's been here for a few meetings. An ex-Citibank finance guy that now is working on helping technology startups get their business going. He's going to talk to us about strategy, the big S word, okay? And how to execute on that strategy. So How about we end with a big round of applause for Ignacio
Thank
and a
you.
big thank
Thank you for listening.
Iggy, where do you connect with you?
Email, LinkedIn, whatever you guys are comfortable with. The app,
Dale.
the Apprentice app.
And by the way, some of the people here are not in apprentice, so they don't know that we have an app. Ignacio is not Rivera, is Riveira, EIRA. And I think you're the only Ignacio Rivera at Ryder Corporation.
I am.
Okay, there you go. Guys, God bless. We'll talk to you later. Moigi, we'll hang out later. Anna, I'll talk to you later. Alex,
Mo, may I
talk
ask
to you
you a
later.
question?
Yes. Who's that?
Can I ask Mo? I'm not trying to extend the meeting. Everyone can still leave. I just want to. Can I ask Mo a question?
Sure, I can stick around.
Do you just a quick one? Do you have
Okay.
any AI books? Because I saw like you have another one called The Truth About SharePoint, but I didn't see another AI one.
The only AI book I have right now is called The Last Human Generation.
Okay, so that's the one I have.
So that's the one I teach. And there's more stuff coming out, but it'll be online.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Jack. Thanks for asking.
Good job. We'll connect later on. Thank you, Jack. Ami from the Gambia. Alex, we'll talk later. Okay. Good job. Thanks, bro.
Talk later. Thank you. Thank you very much, everyone here. Mo as
Thank
well.
you.
Alex.
Have a good one.
Good to see you on here.
Boa tarde.
All right, ciao.
Boa noite.